We fully know who is aggressor country. Russia is aggressor country. Russia should be punished. Ukraine must be strengthened. So that's why, of course, on some issues there are some divergences. At the same time, as I mentioned previously, we have to step up as Europeans. We have to realize that this is in a proximity, in a neighborhood of Europe. So Europe must play more responsible role. So here we see also encouragement, motivation, sometimes a bit of push from United States actually as a good thing, because we need to invest more in our own defense. And through investing more in our own defense, we'll be also able to support much more strongly and responsibly Ukraine.
Russians have launched a spring offensive. Alexander Sersky says that despite ongoing negotiations, Russia is attacking 2 Ukrainian regions with increased intensity. Meanwhile, defence ministers from across Europe are meeting to discuss further military support for Ukraine. We're joined now by the Latvian Defence Minister, Andris Spruds. Good morning.
Good morning.
Lovely to have you with us. Just first off, can you tell us what we're expecting from this meeting today?
Well, the meeting is a goodwill meeting, the meeting of the goodwill coalition, which is important that we continue supporting Ukraine. We have different formats of supporting Ukraine. Of course, Latvia does it also actively bilaterally. But at the same time, in those circumstances, what we see right now, when Ukraine fights for its freedom, when we see some transatlantic, I would say, adjustment, we need also to find new ways how we can support continuously and unwaveringly Ukraine. So that's why there is a goodwill coalition, around 30 nations which come together. And of course, we'll be putting on the table those ways how we can continuously assist, support, strengthen Ukraine, because at the very end, we need to reach the peace through strength. So when Ukraine, of course, is crucial, that is being strengthened by allies, by partners.
I mean, you talk about a period of adjustment. We've been talking about the economic impact of Donald Trump's policies today on the programme. Will America be represented at this meeting today, and does it matter either way?
The United States is part of a so-called Rammstein format. The Goodwill Coalition is primarily European format, but not only. So in this case, yes, it is a show and demonstration that Europeans are taking more responsibility in their hands, in our hands. And here, United States are also absolutely right that in terms of defense expenditure, in terms of contributions, we need to spend more, we need to step up. So this is a format which, first of all, is led by UK and France. But at the same time, Rammstein format still remains a wider format. The meeting of the contact group of Rammstein formats will be taking place tomorrow, and then the United States will be represented.
Yeah. Will there be discussion about an armed coalition of the willing? It's something we talked a lot about a few weeks ago, and we've not talked about it as much since. How many countries are signed up to patrol the border? And is that discussion, part of what you're talking about today?
Well, as I mentioned, around 30 countries seem to be part of the coalition of the willing, because it means that still there are potentially some changes. Some countries might come with additional resources, additional positions, additional means how to also contribute. We, from Latvian perspective, understand the importance of this coalition of the willing as material support, training support, but also potentially support on the ground. At the same time, for Latvia, we are contributing a lot, and we understand also that we can contribute in some other ways as well, especially in training. But we, being a frontline country and countries in Eastern flank, also first of all have to focus on our regional defense, our national defense, because we are frontline country with aggressor country. So that's why, of course, there are different positions which being united by one position that we should support Ukraine, but of course at the same time there are some diversity what kind of specific mechanisms we can provide and we can implement. Yes, but security assistance to Ukraine through different means is absolutely crucial, and it unites all the countries within the group of like-minded nations.
You're increasing your defence spending to 4% next year. Do you think the UK should do the same?
Well, we spend or we invest in defense already right now 3.7%. And we are planning to invest in defense 5%. There are still some discussions in the government because, of course, it is also the financially challenging, but we realize there are more, even bigger challenges in terms of geopolitical threats. So that's why already from next year, most likely we'll have 5% for our defense. And it's not just about Latvia, it's also about Lithuania, Estonia. So countries take very seriously the threat what comes from aggressor country, from Russia in this case. But not only, I mean, geopolitics are changing, geopolitics are becoming more complex and complicated.
But should the UK do the same? I suppose that's the question. Do you feel like you're stepping up? Are we doing enough?
We are stepping up. We, of course, encourage our partner countries, our allies, our friends to step up as well. I think UK has shown a great example also of leadership. We have many different cooperative formats with UK. Of course, UK is co-leading country in a drone coalition. UK is a leading country in JEF, Joint Expeditionary Forces, which we highly value. So we believe, of course, every country must step up. At the same time, we also realize that there are different starting points. UK has done a lot. So it, of course, also depends on the financial framework in many ways, but it must be stepped up in all different ways, including financially. So for us, it is taken for granted. But again, so that we respect, honor the diversity of the countries within European Union, within Europe, and also within NATO.
Yeah.
But of course, 3%, I would say, it is absolutely the minimum which should be reached by the Hague summit.
I want to talk about the impact of Donald Trump. Do you think he's been a good or a bad thing in this particular instance? Because he was putting a lot of pressure on trying to get a deal between Ukraine and Russia. The Russians are stepping up attacks now. Vladimir Putin has essentially manipulated the Americans. He's given nothing away, and Ukraine has offered a significant amount, and yet the offensive is still underway. Do you think that Donald Trump has been a good influence or a bad influence here?
Well, I guess there is no black and white in politics, especially in such a complicated context to what we see right now. Of course, everyone wants to have a peace, everyone, including Ukrainians, and I would say the most at all Ukrainians would like to have a peace. Of course, the question is about what kind of peace. That's what we always underline. It must be just peace, it must be sustainable peace, it must be peace through strength. There are some things which I would say we could be critical of. Respectively, there are some contradictory signals. There are some already concessions even before negotiations started. We fully know who is aggressor country. Russia is aggressor country. Russia should be punished. Ukraine must be strengthened. So that's why, of course, on some issues there are some divergences. At the same time, as I mentioned previously, we have to step up as Europeans. We have to realize that this is in a proximity, in a neighborhood of Europe. So Europe must play more a responsible role. So here we see also encouragement, motivation, sometimes a bit of push from United States actually as a good thing, because we need to invest more in our own defense. And through investing more in our own defense, we'll be also able to support much more strongly and responsibly Ukraine.
Finally,
and Ukraine to act and speak from positions and negotiate from positions of strength.
Yeah, finally, I have to ask you about the news. President Zelensky is saying that Ukraine is aware of at least 155 Chinese nationals fighting for Russia. He's accusing Beijing of turning a blind eye to their recruitment. Does it concern you to hear that there are Chinese nationals fighting on that front line?
Of course, it's concerning news. The Chinese have formally taken a neutral status. But at the same time, we fully realize that there is assistance from China coming. Of course, so far we might have identified assistance which comes in the form of material support. Now we see that there are potentially some Chinese nationals. I would not, of course, I would not draw wider conclusions or generalizations, because still the facts or details must be clarified what exactly it means. We realize that there have been North Korean units very clearly. So about China, it's still let's say, to be identified specifically, but it once more underlines that we live in a world, we are not just facing one Russia, we are facing the geopolitical risks, we are facing rise of authoritarianism and dictatorship states. We see the revisionism globally, And of course, we should take also very seriously those news which come from Ukraine that also there is more Chinese presence. And we remember that in NATO strategic concept, Russia is a threat, it's identified clearly, China is a challenge. So we see that there is a challenge in what we see right now in Ukraine, not only coming from Russian side.
Andris Spruds, many thanks for joining us on the programme.